Riley. Mr. Graham.
No.
Mr. Corning.
No.
Mr. Lee.
No.
Mr. Cruz.
No.
Mr. Sass.
No.
Mr. Hawley.
No.
Mr. Cotton.
No, Proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No.
Mr. Tillis.
No, Proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, the votes are 11 yeas, 11 nays. It's a tie vote.
The committee has recorded a tie vote on Judge Jackson's nomination to be the Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. Pursuant to Section 3, subsection 1A of Senate Resolution 27 of the 117th Congress, I'll transmit to the Secretary of the Senate a notice of this tie vote.
Good morning. It is Tuesday, April 5th, 2022, and welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. Today, walking while black, driving while black, Starbucks while black, no showing up to school, 2 minutes late while black. Yeah, we'll explain that at what allegedly happened to two Georgia Tech students who arrived 2 minutes late. Also, former President Barack Obama is back at the White House today. His first visit to Pennsylvania Avenue since he left office in 2017, and President Biden is getting heat for his $30 billion budget request earmarked for law enforcement. All that this morning with James Wright of the Washington Informer and the chief legal mind for Let It Be Known, Robert Tarver of the Tarver Law Firm. Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good morning.
Well, we begin first, of course, with the confirmation vote of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Well, we saw what happened yesterday. They get to move her forward after an 11-11 tie, as you just saw in the committee. But 3 Republicans came out in support of her: Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, and Mitt Romney of Utah came out in support of Judge Jackson, giving her a 53-47 edge, and all but assuring confirmation later this week. But notably on the no side, and this is where I want to go today. I mean, because by now everyone is up to date that we will have the first black woman Supreme Court justice, one of the most qualified, if not the most qualified, who will be sitting on that bench in Judge Jackson. But I wanted to, James, I start with you on Senator Tim Scott. 3 other Republicans said yes. Senator Tim Scott, who a lot of people were looking for, saying, you know what, and after that impassioned speech by Senator Cory Booker that included Tim Scott as a black man, are very disappointed in Tim Scott this morning.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say that Tim Scott seems to have a problem with black women in authority. Let me explain why. A few years ago, Loretta Lynch was nominated by President Obama to be the first black female attorney general. Tim Scott did not vote for her. So apparently now he is not going to vote for Judge Jackson. I think the black women in South Carolina need to sit down with Tim Scott and have a serious talk with him. You know, he has to understand that he represents all of South Carolina and not Mitch McConnell's portion, Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham's portion of South Carolina. I just, you know, it's very disappointing that, you know, people put these folks up here and they do what they want to do, and they're doing what they're told to do and not doing what their constituents want.
Yeah, and just as a matter of a fact, the committee was an 11-11 tie, and the rules are that the Senate Majority Leader then gets to do some things to her to move her out of committee. They did that. And then the Republican support that came in also, but we know if it was a 50-50 tie, ultimately it would have been in favor of the judge because Vice President Harris would have had the tie-breaking vote. But go ahead, Attorney Tarver, what did you see yesterday?
Ultimately, this was never really in peril in terms of her moving forward. But I do want to pick up on something that your previous guest just said, because I'm not disappointed in Tim Scott. In order to be disappointed, you have to have expectations. And at every turn, Tim Scott has showed us who he is. He has demonstrated that he places his party interests over his heritage and racial interests at every turn. And so we should not be surprised at Tim Scott and people like Tim Scott The one thing that I think we do need to do from a legal perspective is call it out, because there is no legal reason why Judge Brown should not be sitting on this particular court. There was a time in this country when the parties were able to get together and say, if your qualifications met a certain standard, then you could move forward to the court. And they recognized that there would be this balance on one side and balance on the other. Those days are gone. And so now you have, as we've discussed so many times on this program, political theater. This is nothing more than a show for their constituents. And they made it a good show for their constituents. Lindsey Graham screaming as he was screaming, people talking about whether or not babies are racist, defining a woman. How do those things in any way suggest that you're qualified for the highest court of this land? They don't. But what they do is they show that we've moved into a completely new era where there are no holds barred as far as determining that we are just dealing with politics and nothing else. It doesn't even matter.
Yeah, James Wright of the Washington Informer. James, either Thursday or Friday, the formal vote will take place. The official vote will take place to elevate Judge Jackson to the U.S. Supreme Court. What do you anticipate by having a Black woman, the first Black woman on the Supreme Court?
Well, it will certainly add to the diversity of the court, and it will add to the diversity of the opinion of the court. But let me say this about adding Judge Jackson to the court, and I have said this before, and I am very proud to say this again. She is an excellent writer, and it will add an excellent writer to that court. And a lot of the people who are on the court right now are known as thinkers, but they're not necessarily known as good writers, able to write logical, concise opinions. Now, when she writes an opinion, and she's written some opinions that have gone 50 and 60 pages as a U.S. district judge, but that was what was required, and that is what is needed on that court. And let me also make two quick points. You know, Clarence Thomas's confirmation included a deadlock committee, 7-7, when he went forward in 1991. And even encompassing this, saying with Clarence Thomas, it just seems like whenever a Black person is nominated to that Supreme Court, they just have a lot of problems.
but you know what I'm thinking about? How ironic is this? That we actually had during Thomas's hearing a justice who stood up and talked about his collection of erotica. All right, remember that? He had a collection of pornography. And now you've got the right standing up and talking about her with child pornography cases. It has just gone so completely crazy. But I want to pick up on something James said. The reason why we've had opinions from the right that have not been very concise is that they've had to engage in legal conjecture in many cases to get to where they wanted to get to. So many times the clerks are really the ones behind the opinions. But it's been very difficult for them in many cases. For example, with Citizens United and others to try to justify how you get to those particular conclusions. But James is completely right. Judge Brown is no shrinking violet. She is willing to engage in legal issues, and she will have be a part of the discussion of these legal issues. And that's really important, because one of the things I hope is going to happen, I believe is going to happen, is that the Supreme Court is going to start televising their hearings and their court hearings. And when they do, America will get a chance to hear those arguments laid out concisely and very straightforwardly from Judge Brown.
It's funny you mentioned Clarence Thomas. As you said, it's such an interesting thing. You mentioned Clarence Thomas and you mentioned Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. So here's for America to see: a weak Black man and a strong Black woman. How about that, James? I mean, listen, you got to say what it is. It's Judge Clarence Thomas is allowing things to go on that should never. I mean, you think about growing up in a Black neighborhood. Think about growing up going to a mostly Black school, and think about your friends in the area, and you think about Clarence Thomas and his ideals. It's like, Tim Scott, where did that come from? Where did it come from? And then now you have your wife, in Clarence Thomas's case, running around supporting these conspiracy theories, joining the insurrection, at least starting it, right? Being a part of that first rally,
Right, right.
and just interfering left and right with the process of democracy. Where does that come from, James?
Well, I'm not one of these people that says that the wives of Supreme Court justices, excuse me, I need to be politically correct, spouses of Supreme Court justices should just sit at
He
home and
identifies as a
not do
wife,
anything.
James. Go ahead.
I'm not saying that, but good grief, she has really gone. Jenny Thomas has really gone beyond, sending texts to Mark Meadows when he was the chief of staff to President Trump, saying derogatory things about Vice President Harris and that sort of thing. And it just shows that the right just has no regard to government and the way it should be conducted. And I know the founding fathers would be disappointed if they were to see this.
Well, Tarver, Attorney Tarver, I'm going to go to you with that too. Is there any responsibility that Justice Thomas bears by the actions of his wife, particularly these actions?
Of course he does. I will say it right now, and I'll say it publicly, and I'll say it over and over again. Clarence Thomas has broken the law. There are laws regarding your involvement with matters in which you may be compromised. Now, we're supposed to believe that Clarence Thomas goes home at night and he discusses nothing about these activities of his wife. They just completely go in different. Well, I don't find that hard to believe.
Yeah,
They go
right.
in different bedrooms, but they go in different places. And
Okay.
they don't discuss anything about her daily activities. She is knee deep in conspiracy actions, insurrectionist actions, and he is knee deep in the opinions on those actions. And so those two things are meshing. I'll tell you right now, there is not a court in the land that would not recuse themselves over these types of issues. I cannot even imagine. I couldn't fathom a judge on both the state and federal level continuing to be involved with this. And I think most of your listeners don't know how bizarre this is. But I will tell you right now, if it were any other judge in any other court, in any state or in any federal jurisdiction, that judge would have been out of the case on his own merit a long time ago. So for Thomas to act as he's acting is one of the most bizarre judicial acts that I have ever seen. And he only gets away with it because there is no enforcement mechanism on the part of the federal government and the federal judiciary to make him step down. But you know what? As James said, there is an ethical ability for Roberts and others. This is the Roberts court. And Roberts has the chance to speak up about what he believes, even though he can't remove Thomas. He can speak up about how he feels to Thomas, and perhaps even publicly later on.
Well, again, we are going to bring you the up-to-the-date breaking news when it happens. It is going to happen either Thursday or Friday. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson will be the first Black woman on the U.S. Supreme Court. Also happening today, former President Barack Obama will join President Joe Biden at an event on the Affordable Care Act at the White House today. A source familiar with the plan say that the president and the former president and Vice President Harris will all speak about the Affordable Care Act, marking the first time, of course, the president will be there publicly at the White House since leaving office. They'll deliver remarks on Medicaid, as well as, of course, expanding the Affordable Care Act. It was 12 years ago that Obama signed the Affordable Care Act into law. And that at the time, a hot mic caught then Vice President Biden describing it as a big effing deal. So back at the White House, it's a really rather historic moment in itself that President Obama will be in the White House for the first time since he left. James, give me a little significance to that. Put a little significance on that.
This is very significant because, as both of you know, this is President Obama's signature legislative accomplishment. Now, I'm not going to say this is exactly what Barack Obama, and notice I'm saying Barack Obama, necessarily wanted in terms of health care. I think he might have been Medicare for all, personally, but this is a significant legislative achievement for him. And I don't need to tell you all that there have been numerous attempts by the right to get rid of this law and to scrap it, even by President Biden's predecessor, but they were unsuccessful because really people like what it is. There needs to be modifications, but people like what it is.
Yeah, James, what was that guy's name who was before Biden?
Reagan. Yes.
So you caught that, right, Tara?
You know what? We can actually bring this thing full circle to what we were discussing before. The reason why the Affordable Care Act still survives today is because of John Roberts. Because John Roberts stood up when the matter came before the court. And what that shows us is simply this, because I'm just going to bring it back to the court from a legal perspective. John Roberts as the Chief Justice, this is his court. And it shows and demonstrates to me that there is a limit to which John Roberts wants this court to go. And because he has stood up and sided with the minority on some of these significant issues, it shows that even he has a barometer here. Now, we know he's archly conservative, but I think as one of my clients used to say, he may be crazy, but he ain't stupid. He has a limit as to where he wants to go here. And this shows and should demonstrate to all of us the importance and significance of a single Supreme Court justice.
Well, we got our own bit of breaking news this morning. After over a week of being absent, we are now blessed with the presence of the President and CEO of the National Newspaper Publishers Association. Welcome back, Dr. Chavis. We should have some music going on here.
Well, good morning. Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Morning.
It's okay for me to, they say faith, is the substance of things unseen. Because you don't see me doesn't mean that I'm not at work.
Well, we never doubt that, Doc. We never doubt that. Welcome back. Also in the news this morning, Attorney Tarver, I really want you to weigh in on this. For many students and even those who can remember what it was like to be in grade school, the anxiety of running late for class can sometimes feel like being on trial. However, academic tardiness shouldn't actually result in trouble with the law. 2 Black students at Georgia State University found themselves in an unlikely run-in with authorities after a professor, also Black, called campus police on them for arriving to her class just 2 minutes late. Student Bria Blake spoke out on social media to tell her side of the story as a direct witness of the incident. She claims that the 2 classmates named Taylor and Cameron arrived at a mere 120 seconds past the time their English class began at GSU's Perimeter College. That's when, she says, Professor Carissa Gray asked the students to leave, which they refused to do, as Taylor said. And the kids said, "Hey, we paid to be here." Gray then left the room, came back with armed officers. Gone too far, Attorney Tarver?
It's gone way too far. I don't know what the legal basis would be, particularly since those students are licensed to be in the class. Now, look, professors do have the ability to set parameters, but you can't be draconian. You can't be crazy about that, because how does that advance or in any way harm academic progress by letting students who are 2 minutes late into the classroom? But you know what? It kind of runs along the discussions we've been having today. Tim Scott, Clarence Thomas. This is an example perhaps of Black people behaving badly and not knowing how to behave. And unfortunately, I heard about this story as I was watching Django, and I could equate those characters to Samuel L. Jackson's character in that movie. And it just drives me crazy that we're acting that way in 2022.
Yeah, James, every time there's police involvement with African Americans, there is always the heightened chance of something going badly wrong. Does that play into here why the students should be upset?
The students should really be upset. I kind of chuckled when you told this story, Stacey, because it reminds me of my late mentor, Frances M. Murphy, the publisher of the Washington Afro-American newspaper. She taught journalism at Howard University. And the story was always that if you were late and she closed that door when the class started, you could not come in at all. Now, Miss Murphy didn't call the police. She just didn't let you in the classroom. But Ms. Murphy was making a point is that if you got to be at a certain place at a certain time, you have to do that. But calling the police was way overreaching. That sends a bad message. And as somebody who supports the police, that to me, that's a poor use of resources for our police officers. They need to be out in the community fighting crime.
Yeah, and speaking of police, community organizers focused on eliminating police violence are upset with President Joe Biden's proposed budget, which he announced last week. It allocates at least $30 billion in new police spending. Biden opposed calls to defund the police since the movement began to build broader support in 2020. He reiterated his stance in his recent State of the Union address, declaring we should all agree the answer is not to defund the police. The answer is to fund the police. James, I know you've talked a lot about this, Attorney Tarver, and of course, Dr. Chavez, I know you have some thoughts on it as well, but $30 billion for police. And let me start with you, Attorney Tarver. Is that something that's necessary?
Look, I have no problem with funding the police and being significantly liberal with funding the police. The question is not funding the police. The question is, where are those funds allocated? And what we've talked about for the most part is not defunding, but reallocating and reassessing policing so that some of those funds go to mental health policing, go to dealing with different scenarios, dealing with de-escalation and things of that nature. I had a case recently, well, actually it wasn't recently, but I had a case where a young man basically was going to commit suicide by police. And the only reason he's dead now is because the police did not have appropriate measures for dealing with a mental health individual. People have died because police agencies are not properly trained and funded to deal with mental health issues. And we are facing a mental health crisis in this country.
Absolutely. And James, I know you had some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I square with Attorney Tarver on that and everything that he said. I think the most important thing is that we have enough police in order to fight crime in our communities and not defund the police. And I wish the left would get rid of that term because it's hurting them politically in swing districts.
Yeah, and Dr. Chavis, we've talked about this as well, the idea of defunding the police, but now we have the $30 billion that the president has earmarked for law enforcement. Just your concise thoughts on that.
Well, keep in mind, I support what Attorney Talbot just said and what James White just said. Listen, we have to be careful with our rhetoric on the left. I'm not so much concerned about the right, but Congressman James Clyburn made a good point. When the slogan first happened, defund the police, Clyburn.
Did we lose Doc?
Hello?
Go ahead, Doc.
Clyburn said that this is similar to burn, baby, burn. And that term in the 1960s hurt the civil rights movement. So we got to be careful with phrases like defund the police. Attorney Talbot's right. It's what the funding is going to be used for. So I support President Biden's stance on this. I just meeting with the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, NOBLE. They need funding, not only to deal with mental health issues. They need funding to get more brothers and sisters in the ranks and in charge of these police departments around the country, both on the federal level and the state level and the municipal level. So I think we have a long ways to go and not get diverted on slogans that hurt the freedom movement rather than help to empower the freedom movement. The issue is not about money to the police. It's how the money that the police get is used. And that's what we should be focused. And we got to be careful with these slogans like defund the police, because this is 2022. I guarantee you, some members of Congress are going to lose their seats in Congress messing around with slogans that do not resonate with the masses of our people. And going back to what happened with the college student and the sister, unfortunately, being unsisterly by calling the police on the student, that was totally wrong. And I think we try to, it's jogging while black, driving while black, smoking while black, now studying in college while black. We can't do anything. We can't breathe while black without somebody trying to criminalize our human behavior, trying to criminalize our culture, trying to criminalize our way of life. And unfortunately, as Malcolm used to teach us, sometimes we engage in our own self-hatred. Well, sometimes we engage in pulling ourselves down rather than lifting ourselves up as a people.
Well, I'll just say, and David Youngblood says existing while black. He also says that you should reform the police, not defund the police. Finally, this morning, it's been 7 years since the world lost the most electric popular music entertainer of all time, the one and only Prince. And on a local Minneapolis television station, they have unearthed a never before seen video of Prince. Believed to be his very first interview. He was just 11 years old. The archivist was going through some old footage, looking for Minneapolis landmarks and to offer context on the recent teachers' strike there when he came across a very young but familiar looking individual giving an interview to the station about a teachers' strike. During the strike in 1970s, here we go. We have it
the
here.
kids in favor of the picketing?
Yep.
How come?
I think they should get a better education too, and I think they should get some more money, cause they be working extra hours for us and all that stuff.
That was Prince Rogers Nelson, who his friends called him Skipper. Wow. James, as a journalist, you have to appreciate this. This was it was found totally by accident. This is when you do your homework, right? So as we said, the news station, because of the teacher strike there in Minneapolis, was going through the archives about the teacher strike in 1970. And they were looking at different landmarks and came across the fact that they interviewed this kid, and the archivist like, he looks so familiar. Well, instead of telling the newsroom who he thought it was, he went to show everyone, and they all, that's Prince.
Yeah.
And of course, the Prince historians and friends from the school, they found them. What a find, James, as a journalist, had to move you.
Oh, it did move me. And as somebody who is a history buff, you love that kind of stuff. You love going back into history and finding those gems. And that is a gem about history like that. That's priceless.
Yeah, it is as priceless as you could ever imagine. Attorney Tarver, I know you're in a much different field than we are, but not necessarily that much, right?
Well,
legal field and
but, I've represented many musicians and many artists, and the one thing that really brings to mind is just the whole circle of history there. That you have someone like Prince, who was so iconic from a legal perspective, standing up, getting ownership of his masters, standing up, getting ownership of his publishing, and basically say, I'm going to go on my own, which set the standard for so many other artists. So this really just rounds out his entire life. Who knew that he was an activist way back when?
At 11 years old, right? Supporting teachers. How about that? Prince won an Oscar, numerous Grammys, and American Music Awards. He was inducted in 2004 to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And that was a wonderful night. I will always remember that night because I went to a private show Prince gave right after the Hall of Fame in New York at a place called Club Black. And Prince got on the stage at 2:30 a.m. that morning, and he left the stage at 6:30 a.m. that morning and played everything in his catalog. I mean, everything, and played every instrument as he's come to be known. But my goodness, Prince, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, died on April 21st, 2016 at the age of 57. Prince is sorely, sorely missed.
Gone way too soon.
Absolutely. Isn't all the great ones gone too soon, though? I mean, obviously, we lost Michael at 50. Whitney was, 46, I believe, when we lost Whitney. And, they all just, Jimi Hendrix was 27.
Yeah, the very disappointing thing is if you
Buddy
turn
Holly
into
was
R&B radio at any time and just start listening to the litany of songs, and you'll just say, wow, he's gone, she's gone, she's gone. And it's really a sad thing that our artists don't have physical longevity. Their songs have longevity, but they themselves are just not lasting long.
You can look at Hathaway, Donny Hathaway. You can look at Minnie Riperton, and I'll go over to another side, look at Buddy Holly, gone too soon.
Sam Cooke.
They
all were Jackie Wilson. You go down the list. It's unfortunate. But certainly big Prince fan here. So gone too much too soon. I can't even go to concerts anymore. It's just hard to go to concerts anymore because that guy, what a concert. But anyway, I digress. Thanks, guys, so much. Attorney Tarver, it's always good to have your expertise. James, we know you're taking a trip. Be safe and enjoy your time away. And everybody, thank you for joining. Let it be known. We will see you tomorrow.